Well, on the new media show tonight, I've got a terrific guest. I've got as my co-host, Mr. Mike Dell, who's a VP at Blubrry Podcasting, and Mike has his own podcast too. One's called Mike Dell's World. If you want to go check it out, it's at mikedell.com, and he has a hyper local show called Cup of Traverse City. So you're playing around with local content, Mike. That's great. And then also is the co-host of the podcast Insider with the Blubrry team. So
well, you and I had you and I had something in common. Todd was my co-host on Podcast Insider,
right?
As he was the co-host here.
Yeah.
So we've had to revamp that one a little bit, and now we got Mackenzie and Dave also co-hosting. So it's
so we kind of have taken full circle on this to some degree. Todd leaving us kind of left a big hole in the podcasting space and with me, and then also with you and the Blubrry team and things like that. So he is sorely missed, and we will keep him in our thoughts and our memories as we go forward. And he's going to be honored at the Hall of Fame that's coming up too here at Podfest. So I'm excited for that. But today, Mike, I wanted to kind of do a little bit of a different episode here and to kind of dive into a topic that I keep hearing more and more people talk about. And it's going to be rather meta because this is a topic that's talking about the format of a podcast now, or an online show. It could be a video show. It could be a live show like this.
Like what we're doing.
Right. Exactly. And so I'd like to talk about why so many podcasts and live shows kind of stall out at some point, right? Where they kind of grow and then maybe they don't continue to grow. And I think all of us, I'm sure that the Blubrry team is thinking about this too, is that, well, what are the things that have changed really in the expectations of the audience? And it's not that the hosts are bad, but maybe we need to get a little bit more structure in our shows and to get to the point, right? And I think starting out, it's this concept where we record and have a lot of hope, right, that it's going to work out. I know Todd and I did that with this show for most of its life, right, where we just pulled up the mics and started talking, and there's something good about that.
Oh yeah, that's a viable format.
Well, it is, but in some ways, it creates a kind of a big variable experience for the listener, and instead, more and more people are talking about this concept of offering a hook, and be more design. And from that concept of design means you've got an idea, you've got a message, and you've got to deliver it, right? Is that something that resonates with you, Mike?
Oh yeah, but it can go either way. What'll happen with podcasters is they just start, and then they adjust as they go, and then there's some others that plan everything out, and I'm going to launch on this date, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that. And that's fine too, but then they might overthink it. So be, a little careful with that, because, we call it paralysis by analysis. And, if you worry about every little single detail, it's going to drive you nuts. But again, it's always good to have a plan. That's the other thing. A lot of podcasts start without a goal.
Yeah, right. Or what's that message that you're trying to drive to the audience? So what we're going to do in the episode today is really kind of break that down, and what it means to treat your show like maybe a real pro level show, right? I mean, one that has been thought out. I know I did this for many years with my nationally syndicated radio show that I did, and it's interesting how I kind of left that behind when podcasting started, and I started to do more of the riffing and the what could be considered to be just kind of like conversational stuff that isn't very structured. Right. And it's so important now. And I think this is, unfortunately, and a lot of people will kind of maybe push back on this, but this change has really always been there with radio, and it's always been there in media, because I did it many, many years ago with my radio show, but I think it's coming back into vogue now, really, based on pre-recorded videos in a platform like a YouTube, where
Right.
people feel like that you've got to engage with that audience in the first, 10 seconds, and you
Yeah.
hook them fast to keep them watching, because people are so distracted now with
Oh
so much
yeah. Well,
options.
look at TikTok and shorts and
Oh, yeah,
reels and
totally.
all that. People, if it's not done in 2 minutes, they're on to the next thing.
Right.
And you've got to hook them a little bit, but also don't link bait either. That can be an issue.
Well, yeah, and I
Yeah.
think that is a good point, Mike, that there is a lot of that going on,
Oh, yeah.
especially in YouTube these days,
Oh,
where
for
people
sure.
are, it's almost like the common experience now is to kind of go through a wall, like on TikTok or on
Yeah.
YouTube or whatever, and it's almost like doom scrolling, right? So
Yeah.
you're basically trying to find the more extreme disaster
Yeah.
or
Well,
controversy,
I'll get
right?
on YouTube Shorts
Yeah.
sometimes, and okay, where did that hour go? You know,
Right.
it's supposed to be a 2 minute video or a minute video or whatever it is now, and it's a time waster, but people are tuned to that kind of thing sometimes.
Yeah. Well, I think more and more it's got to be extreme to stand out,
Yeah.
So, but that's more of what the topic is. What we're trying to talk about today is, well, how do you structure a show that gives consistent value to the audience, right? And I mean,
Right.
structure that live program, whether it's live like this or it's recorded. I mean,
Well,
you
this
can
is
do it
both.
either way, right? Yeah, it's both, and really increasingly, that's what people are talking about now, is that it needs to be probably both, and we'll talk a little bit about that further in the episode here, because what you're creating is a whole stack of content that you're going to be able to repurpose potentially.
Yeah. And, sorry to keep going on the short thing, but
Uh,
you could take your podcast video and also create shorts,
oh yeah,
salient points and all that. I mean, you could have the whole stack. Why not do everything if you can? And, time, it can be an issue too, though, with some creators.
yeah. But you do have to really kind of take the most valuable points or the most valuable parts
Yeah.
of it, ideally, right? I think that there are a lot of people that just churn out everything, right? But
Yeah.
I'm not sure that all of it. I mean, I've seen it on my own channels on YouTube when I've done that, and there's huge variability between how many people view a particular short.
Right.
So some of them are really popular and other ones aren't.
Yeah.
So it's like anything else. We're in the content business and we have to play to that.
Yeah.
But
There's
creating,
algorithms everywhere,
right.
and
Well, and
even on
that's,
podcasting to a certain extent.
yeah, and that's another great point too, Mike, is that we are playing to algorithms more than we ever did before. This
Mhm.
concept of having a gut human contribution to your content is still important to some degree, but in
Right.
a lot of ways, the big successful shows are playing to the algorithm increasingly, and that
Yeah.
that is not necessarily a good thing, but
Yeah.
it's
Well, it all
something
depends
that
on the
the
goal
reality
too.
is.
If
Right,
your goal is to set the world on
right.
fire, then yeah, you want to play all the games. But for some shows, that's not the goal.
Right.
The goal is to either entertain
Yep,
or
yep.
teach or that kind of thing. And some people just like talking in the mic and hearing themselves talk later. you know.
Yeah,
So,
I think that the reputation of podcasting has had a history of, a couple of guys in the basement with a couple of microphones, just kind of riffing and drinking and having a good time and not really structured too much. And
those don't take they don't take it seriously. They're not like a radio show used to be,
yeah,
and or anything. But I've noticed a lot. Even radio has gone closer to what podcasting was. As far as a lot of the shows now are very not planned. Uh, the talk shows I'm talking about, and or they do a lot of winging it, whether that's planned or not. But so it can go both ways. But if you're going to take this at all seriously, and first figure out your goal, and then plan it out.
Yeah. And that's not to say that you can go beyond your outline. It's like I'm not following the outline that I created for this show because I'm trying to be a meta example to some degree. But even this show is not perfect in this, right? So some of the things that we're going to talk about tonight as we get further into the show are going to be ideals, right? You may or may not be able to get to those, but this concept of recording and hoping that it's going to work out is something that I think we're kind of leaving that era.
It used to be that way. I mean, literally, you put up a podcast and you pretty much got an audience because you showed up on a directory somewhere and people are looking for it. But that's, with, what is it? Probably 500,000 active shows, but there's, 5 million feeds out there now. And, how do you make yourself stand out in that?
Yeah, exactly. So I also wanted to mention that at the end of the episode, we're going to do a little bit of a Q&A. So if you want to post a question into your social channel that you're watching this on, I'll go through all of the questions towards the end of the show, and we will address your comments or your contributions, right? Because we definitely want to hear from you and your thoughts and your experiences on this path too, because I think it is a little bit of a shift in people's perceptions of podcasting. But if I look at the really upper echelons of the podcast medium, that's what I'm seeing happen all the time now. So that's the norm. What we're talking about tonight is really more the norm than the exception now.
Right.
So take that for what it is. It's still fun to come in and create a show, just click live and have a conversation. And you're certainly welcome to do that. I'm not saying that you're going to be shamed for just creating a chat show or something like that. I think it's
just take it for what it's worth. It's, there's no such thing as the wrong way to do it. That's the beauty of podcasting. There's no particular rules. There's some standards and there's some best practices and all that stuff. But, as far as, you do you, but, if you want to take it a little more professionally and possibly grow it to a point where, where it's something bigger, you got to plan it out. It's just not going to work. Two brains, one microphone type show.
There was a time, I guess, for a while, and this show was an example of it for many years. And I think a lot of people appreciated just the casual conversation but that's, the past with this show was really a reflection of Todd's approach, which was to just create a conversation, not do a bunch of pre-planning, even though he did a fair amount of pre-planning with his Geek News Central show. So there's a little bit of a contradiction there. I think it was more about his time. And
it just depends on what the show's for, again.
Yeah, exactly.
Goals.
And how it fits into your life, right? And is it a big time drag for you? And I think that's the other big tension in the medium right now, is that when you intentionally design something for an experience, and you do it in a kind of a more professional way, I suppose, that does take a little extra time. And if you don't have the time to do that, but you still want a podcast, then that's where you get into this more casual approach.
Yeah, I'm kind of the king of pod fade. I've started and stopped more podcasts than anybody I know. And that's always been the problem. It's like, oh crap, I don't have time to do it today. And then 2 months goes by and you're like, oh, well, I guess I'm done with that. You don't want to do that either. So be definitely intentional about how much this is going to take. A long time ago, it used to be for an hour show, it'd take you 4 hours of prep and publishing. And that's come down a lot with all the tools we have now.
Yeah. I think it's definitely speeded up the post-production side, but I think there's a lot of dangers in using too much AI.
AI.
That's what I've found.
What it's good at,
Right.
Yeah.
Which may not be much actually beyond just writing a description.
So good for album art sometimes.
Yeah, exactly.
Episodic art anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause I find everything that comes out of the AI stuff, I hand edit everything pretty much, after it comes out. Cause it's never quite right. Right. It's
Yeah.
never, it
Yeah,
doesn't always come out in my voice. It doesn't always use the characterizations that I like to use. I mean,
well,
it's
you have
really
to edit it. You
right,
can't just, copy paste out of
right.
ChatGPT and expect it to sound right or whatever. So, you kind of do have to rewrite it, but you can also train it to write more like you, but
Yeah.
it takes time and effort. And, again, time sometimes is a problem.
Yeah. But it is a little bit, I keep hearing this phrase out there. It says, about podcasting and live video are not dead per se as a medium, though there's
Yeah.
probably some people out there that think that um, the live stuff is too hard. It's too hard to build an audience and all that stuff. But I think the increasing perception is that low effort, unstructured, unmanaged shows are increasingly struggling.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, for
because
sure.
people have elevated their expectations, as we have become the mainstream media now. I mean,
Yeah.
podcasting is now really leading in the media side now. I mean, all
Right.
these major media companies are chasing to catch up to what podcasting and online media is
Yeah, we're
doing.
we're always talking with media companies,
Yep.
radio, cable channels, TV
And they're trying to
channels, that
figure it
kind of
out, right?
stuff. They wanna know how to do this podcasting thing, and
Yeah.
it's really kind of what they're doing now on air, with a little bit of finesse to create a show. I mean, yeah, you don't want something that sounds like 10 minutes of content and 10 minutes of commercials and all that stuff. So you got to kind of
Yeah.
it can't be exactly like broadcasting, but it can be pretty close.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. It certainly can be. And I think that that's what's going on right now is that there's a lot more pressure on podcasters now to elevate their game because, increasingly more professional productions are starting to capture the audience, right?
Yeah.
And because, let's call it what it is for most of our civilization's life, as far as in the modern era,
Mhm.
the mainstream legacy media really dominated the consumption. So there's a lot of humans out there that expect higher quality content
Right.
for them to
You know,
engage with.
I kind of live on the tech side sometimes, and that could be as simple as getting a decent microphone and a decent interface, and just making sure you're a decent camera if you're doing video. Don't get bottom of the shelf stuff, because people will not tolerate bad audio. They might even tolerate bad video, but bad audio is definitely a turnoff for people.
Yeah.
And some of these bigger shows, though, they also have an unfair advantage. They have a staff
Yeah.
that does a
Well,
lot of
that's true.
stuff,
Right.
and
That's true.
whereas the indie podcasters, generally, they are the staff.
Yeah.
So, and that kind of throws, I mean, not that you couldn't do a great job by yourself, of all this stuff, but, it's a whole lot easier when you throw a lot of that stuff to other people.
Yeah, then you become kind of a manager of people, right?
Yeah, of course.
I know for the many years that I've been involved in podcasting, it's always been kind of like a solo thing, right? Where,
Yeah.
the host basically does everything. And
Yeah.
to some degree, that's the world that I still live in.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
podcasting first started, there wasn't any big companies in it. There was, maybe NPR, I think, came in pretty early, but for the
Yeah.
most part, it was, as I like to say, the guy sitting next to the water heater in the basement.
Right.
It was independent, and some of those were really good. I mean,
Yeah.
so that doesn't matter if it's just you or you have a whole staff. You should still be able to do quality. And
Yeah.
there's a bit of a learning curve on some of this stuff. So
Right.
you put the time in for that. In your planning, also plan, hey, I need to learn how to edit. I need to learn how to get good audio. I need
Yeah.
to figure out my lighting and all that. And I haven't really done that very well here because I don't do a lot of video, but not bad.
Yeah. Well, Well, let's talk about some of the characteristics of what would be considered to be a kind of like a pro level show. One that, I mean, if you have the intent of starting a show,
Yeah.
and you want to make money from it and you want it to grow, these are some characteristics that you probably need to think about, right? So when you start the show, and to some degree we did this at the beginning of the show too, we kind of teased the idea of what the show was about. And then what I plan on doing is keeping kind of a consistent format here,
Yeah.
and trying to identify what problem that we're trying to solve. And I think that the problem tonight that we're trying to solve is helping people understand that there needs to be probably a meeting of the minds between the expectations that you have for your show and the amount of effort that go into it, right?
Yeah.
So it's really getting clear on what your goals are is really key to it too. And if your goals are that you want to monetize and you want to consistently grow, well, then you have to start thinking about formatting your show in a way that caters to the increasing expectations of audience now, and understanding who your audience is, and know who you're speaking to and what their needs are.
And on the outline here, you got reason for existing. Well, that's your goal. Again, if your goal is to talk on the microphone, well, that's one thing. But if you really want to grow a show, you got to put some pre-planning into it. Know what it's going to take time-wise. Now it'll get faster as you get better at it. So
it'll get easier. It'll get easier. I mean, I did this for about 7 years with my nationally syndicated radio show, where I had a consistent format that I stuck to every single week. So all I had to do was kind of like fill in those slots with content, right? And so the audience knew every week what they were going to get. And in some ways, that's really the bigger picture of this, is that whatever you do, you probably, it's helpful to be consistent about it. And so when a person follows your show or wants to engage with you, that they know what they're going to get when they listen, right?
And they also build you into their schedule.
Right, of course.
And with podcasting delivered via RSS, then they don't have to listen to it when you're doing it. But if you're doing a live, you say, hey, every Wednesday night at 6 p.m. Eastern time, I'm going to do a show, and people will build that into their schedule.
Yeah, that's right. And it becomes like appointment viewing of sorts. I mean, I think the mainstream media did this for many years with their like Thursday night comedies and things like that, where people, it was like tune in Thursdays, for a good laugh kind of thing. So
TiVo ruined that, but
right, because you could always have it on replay too. But one of the key things though is that at the beginning of everything that you do, and this especially applies to YouTube increasingly, is to hook and tease at the very beginning as much as you can, but also think about this from this mental perspective of respecting your audience's attention, right? So how are you going to drive value to them in the first 30 to 60 seconds? Are you gonna make or break their need? And that's kind of what you're doing, is that you're trying to make a fit with what they may be looking for, right? And if not, then they're going to opt out probably either way. But if you meander too much at the beginning, then you're probably going to miss that opportunity.
Yeah, I see a lot of shows, I'm talking YouTube or podcasts or whatever, they'll pick, 30 or 60 seconds of content in the middle of the show to do the kind of the cold open and a hook, so if you have a really good point that somebody made on the show or you made or whatever, you can clip that, put that at the beginning, and that sort of hooks them as well. That's just one method of doing it. I'm kind of a practical guy, so I always do.
And I mean, there's all sorts of these little tricks too. Like one is, state a clear promise for the episode. Like, by the end of this episode, you're going to learn how to create a more engaging and connected show to your audience, and they're going to keep listening.
You could say by the end of this episode, you're going to be tired of hearing us talk.
Well, that's certainly true too, right? So, and if you're watching us, I've worked a little bit to try and make this show a little bit more visually stimulating. I mean, you saw
Yeah.
that intro video that I have, which is fun. I'm I'm kind of thinking to my head, is it, well, maybe I need to play it after we start the show versus playing at the very beginning of the show.
Yeah.
So I don't,
Do
I'm
the
wrestling.
cold open thing, and
Yeah,
it worked.
exactly,
It
exactly.
worked,
And I did that with my radio show for many years too, where I would just say, welcome to the show. Up next in this episode, we're going to talk about this, 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 and this, and then fade out to play the intro music and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so there's two ways of slicing this. You can do it up front. You can do your audio intro with some voiceover at the beginning. That may or may not work. So what you have to do is you have to get in the analytics and you have to look at, well, what was the drop off rate at the beginning of the show, right? Yeah,
right. Yeah, that the one of the shows I do, we have pretty much an ending segment that is 2 or 3 minutes of exactly the same thing every week. When that starts to play, you can see it drop right off.
Yeah, right.
Because they know we're quitting. The new listeners will listen through it, but old listeners like, yeah, we've heard this before, and hit next. There's nothing wrong with that. Who cares if they drop off? Something like that. But again, you want them to go to the end. If possible.
Well, and I think it's a matter of kind of playing around with it too, because there's a bunch of different ways you can go about this. But trying to get disciplined at the very beginning of the show is the key. It's that hook, right?
Yeah.
And just
get that the tone for the whole episode,
right?
Right.
I have a hard time doing that. I mean, I did it for a long time prior to doing the new media show, and I did it for my Speaker Live show for many years, where I would tease up front. But I think doing the new media show over the years with Todd, I kind of got out of that practice.
Yeah.
So,
like I said, there's a place for that. Sometimes it's fun. It just depends on the goal of the show. Again,
right.
Like I keep going back to goals, but so many podcasters, they don't really make a goal. And if you don't plan that out, you're kind of lost on the rest of it. But yeah, I like the idea of get in there and make them want to stay for what you got coming up.
Yeah. And it's okay to be a little entertaining. I know some shows have a big personality and they have, hosts that are very, very good at, hooking people with kind of unique gestures and commenting. And that's where the talent comes into play here. And each one of us has our own kind of abilities, right, to do certain things. And
a lot of podcasters call themselves talent, but that would be in air quotes.
Talent is in the eyes of the viewer, right? Yeah.
So you don't have to be perfect at it. That's the whole other thing. A lot of podcast audiences, they're okay if it isn't perfectly polished, but
it doesn't have to.
You want to stick to a format that works for your audience, and don't be afraid to change it up too. If you're doing a show in segments, and one segment everybody drops off for, and you're like, well, that's not a good one, so you dump that segment and put something else in there, or be flexible.
Yeah, and in this next point, sharpen your key points and angles, not just your topics. So this really gets into trying to drive, a change message of sorts. Like an example, the mistake killing 80% of your marketing is just an example of it, right? I mean, what is that thing that you're going to get from the show that's going to help you not kill 80% of your marketing?
I remember one show. Sorry, I'm off on a tangent here, but I remember one show. The guy'd flip on the microphone. He'd say, "Well, I don't really know what I'm going to talk about today, but welcome to the show." Like, what?
Yeah, right. I'm just here. I showed up. Hopefully, you showed up, and you don't have very high expectations of me.
or we talk business. Okay,
right?
What business?
Yeah, or let's talk marketing. There you go.
Yeah. So, we, we do that with our Podcast Insider show. We always have a tease at the beginning where, we say, this is what this episode's going to be about. We'll tell you about this or whatever, and, that's
Yeah.
something that definitely, if someone, oh, I already know that, and they leave. Well, oh, well, sorry, but at least they know what they're going to get.
Right. And I mean, even if you do these things, there's no guarantee that it's going to work, right?
Sure.
So you have to. This is where it gets back to trying to understand who your audience is and try and understand why they are watching your show. What are they trying to get from the show? And also, especially with live shows like this one, I was trying to work hard to make the metadata for this show very applicable to what I was going to talk about the show and tell a story, right?
Sure.
So that's the other thing too. So especially on YouTube, that thumbnail tells the beginning of the story, and then your description or your title kind of completes that picture, right, of what they're going to get if they watch. So that's what I tried to do with this episode, and I'm going to try and do it with every episode going forward. That's not to say I'm not going to have episodes where it'll just be two guys getting together talking about podcasting and where we are today, because I think I still want to do some episodes that talk about kind of breaking news in the industry, right? Or I'll bring on someone that's with a company that's doing something cool in the medium or something new. So I'm going to shake it up a little bit, but this concept of trying to drill into some value points is where I'm trying to go with this, and to tackle that specific question or that specific problem that people are having. And I'm sure that's what you're doing with the Insider show that you do with Blubrry too, is you're trying to, you're trying to help people along with what they're doing.
And we focus a lot on what we do versus what's going on in the wider podcasting world.
Right.
So it's,
it's an inside Blubrry
show,
podcast, right?
For the
so you would expect that, right? Yeah. So if you were tuning into the Inside Blubrry podcast, you're probably going to get an inside view into Blubrry, right?
Yeah.
With a sprinkling of industry information.
And we definitely we did an episode earlier today, and it was about niche and hyper local podcasting. That is more of kind of an industry thing right now.
Yeah, it is a hot thing right now. A lot of people talking about that.
So,
yeah. And that plays into the radio industry too. I think the radio industry is all excited about that.
Yeah. Well, look at what Adam Curry's doing with his new app. That's exactly what he's doing. It's hyper local.
Podcaster, right?
And you're not going to get. I'm in a town of 15,000 people, and I'm doing a show about Traverse City, this little town. And I don't expect to set the world on fire on that. But, I'm getting more interaction from that show just 2 weeks in than I ever got on any of the other shows I've ever done.
Yeah. So how are you marketing that show, Mike? I mean,
word of mouth.
It's just a word of mouth. Well, I guess that's always been how podcasting has grown, is by word of mouth, right?
Sorry to get into this, but it's 5 minutes every morning. It's a little, hey, what's going on today? What the weather's doing, blah, 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 whatever. Yeah. And then I do an interview on the weekend. So I actually, pack up my backpack and go somewhere and do an interview with somebody. And I had an interview this last weekend that resonated a lot with the aviation community. And I got a ton of new listeners from the aviation community because of it. The guest really promoted it locally here in the aviation community. And that, that's how it's going to grow. I don't expect to make a ton of money on it or anything, but it's just something I wanted to do.
I'm sure that the radio industry doesn't want to hear that. They're not going to make a lot of money on it. Right.
Well, I don't expect to make a lot of money on it, but they do for the morning shows. I'm on radio still periodically. I do I do the local rock station's morning show. I'll do news for them when their news guy is on vacation, so it's not something I do very often. And that show's killing it, as far as local radio.
Yeah.
It's a whole different genre than this. Anyway, sorry, we got off onto a tangent again.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
the other key point is that, what you're doing is you're designing for a couple different audiences here. You're designing for live viewers like we are
Yeah.
here today, as well as people that are gonna see this on replay,
Yeah.
whether it be in video form or audio form.
Mhm.
And you know, and I'm planning in interactive moments, right? So this Q&A at the end of the show
Yeah.
is part of that. And with some of the other live shows that I've done, I've tried to sprinkle it in amongst the show, and
Yeah.
sometimes that works, sometimes it
It could
doesn't.
it could derail you. I
Yeah.
listen to shows that do the value for value boostograms, and the host gets very distracted, or they have a chat room going on while they're recording, and yeah, it can really distract. But sometimes it's useful as well. It
Yeah, I
just
really
depends.
wrestled with this concept of just doing a Q&A show.
Mhm.
But that doesn't play well in the replay realm.
Yeah,
That
and
that
also,
only does well with the live interaction. So
yeah,
having this blend between a structured show that has a outline and a format, in combination with the live interactive part is really the best way to package that, is what I've seen, and that's what I'm trying to do with this show. So anyway, and then, uh, cluster the chat, you know, so let's say you have, polls too, and I would love to get involved in polls, and a lot of the things we're gonna talk about here on this list are things that I would like to do with this show, but I haven't gotten around to it. This is only my second episode of trying to get this thing rebooted under a different format. Um
yeah, it's work in progress. That's
Oh, it is,
that's fine.
yeah, and very few, if any, shows start out at the apex of what's possible at the very beginning.
Right, yeah, you get a little bit of an unfair advantage that way, and, we were able to resurrect the feeds and a site that's similar to what you had before,
Yeah.
and that's been a good thing. So, people that were used to tuning into this, I'm sure a certain subset still do.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I hope so. I hope that the changes that I made to it don't take away from what the idea behind this show was to help people have a inside glimpse into what's going on with the medium, and I think this topic is a reflection of what's going on with the medium today
right.
and how things are changing. You know, I don't know what you think about all that, but yeah, things are always changing, aren't they?
Oh, yeah, it's a completely different vibe than it was 10 years ago, and especially
Yeah,
20 years ago. But and then live really simply wasn't possible back at the beginning, and now it is. And
yeah,
yeah, and as you got written here in the kind of the outline, you know nothing bugs me more than I'm listening to an audio podcast, and I don't even know they're doing video. I'm just listening to the audio, and they say, "Hey, look at this," and I'm like, "No, I can't look at it. It's audio." You know, so be careful with that kind of thing. You
yeah,
know, if you're
yeah,
going to repurpose it as audio, or repurpose it even as video, after the fact, people tend to listen to videos. Like I do that sometimes. I'll start something on YouTube, and I'm,
yeah.
working on my computer on my laptop and not really watching the video. So then I got to stop, rewind. Okay, what are they showing me? You
Yeah,
know?
and that's the core of the tension, between audio podcasting and YouTube today, is this there's a lot of pressure on creators on the YouTube platform to make a lot of visual
Yeah.
presentations of
Well,
sorts on their screen, transitions and overlays and all sorts of stuff that adds a visual component
yeah.
to the content, but that
But if you
doesn't play in the audio.
Right, but if you think about it, how compelling is it watching the two of us talking to microphones? You know, so the video component of this,
Yeah, I
it's
mean, that's
nice to
about as much.
have,
Right,
and
right,
get more distribution that way, but they don't need to watch every millisecond of this to catch everything.
right, right.
Whereas, something that's, more visually interesting, uh, it's different that way. And then that may not play well on audio. So, you got to think of your format. If you are primarily video,
Yeah.
then, play to it. If you're primarily audio with a video component, then think about that as well.
Yeah. And if you want to have more of an audience participation in your show, you kind of have to use catchphrases or whatever that will tell them, it's like, go ahead and post your comment and I will get to it at the end of the show. So, we will have this kind of spotlight segment that we'll talk about your comments in here and just have a goal with your show, that you're going to have that component to it. That's always going to be there. So if the audience comes in here, and we've had a handful of comments that have come through already, and I feel this compulsion to bring them up on the screen because I don't want to disappoint those people that spent the time.
I'm glad I'm not seeing them. I would be distracted. So,
oh, you're not seeing? Well, I think they're on the screen.
I'm not looking. Because I know myself, but the interaction part is sometimes really motivating to a podcaster too.
Somebody's actually watching.
Somebody's actually here. Wow.
Yeah,
cool.
or listening. I mean, a lot of podcasters don't know they're talking their microphones. They don't know if anybody's on the other end.
That's why I get an email about a show I did, and I'm just like, I'm jazzed. I'm like, wow, somebody actually listened to it, and then they thought well enough of me to actually email. Cool.
Yeah, right. I always appreciate that because I've gotten emails from listeners to shows that I've done in the past that were, like 5-6 paragraph long emails from people, and it's like,
that's where ChatGPT comes in. Here, summarize this.
Right. You take all the comments and you process them. But I mean, it's hard sometimes to be able to cover them on the show. I mean, I've had to take a certain comment that I've gotten into the show and cover it like in a mailbag segment. And I would typically just take a part of it and say, well, this is the most interesting part of what the person commented on. So at least I acknowledge the fact that I read the comment, I comprehended it. It was great. And I even commented on it. And I think that's important to do. But, when you're doing this with a live video and considering the replay side and the audio podcast, you really have to think about the fact that you're doing 3 different versions of the show. I mean, really at the end of the day, and that's not easy to do. I mean, I've been hammering this nail for many years now, and I still don't feel like I have a good, perfect kind of fit for it. Right.
Nobody's perfect. And, you don't have to be. That's the thing. Again, people get better at this stuff. Todd always used to say that, he got a lot better as an audio podcaster when he did live, because, he did live video. And that's because you got to be a little bit more on the ball and not say anything stupid. Or try not to. Sometimes the stupid things are fun, but
they just come.
Keep them to a minimum,
Yeah, exactly. So I guess at the end of the day, what we're really talking about here is just being really clear with your hooks and the value equation that you're trying to bring, and work hard to figure out ways that you can level up your production. Without losing the authenticity of the show. Right. And your ability to present it in a coherent way. Your audio needs to be clean. Ideally, I mean, last week's episode with Rob Walsh, my microphone was not even connected, so my audio was coming from my camera, and that didn't sound very good. I was able to fix it in post production.
You can, there's certain little tech glitches, and that's sometimes half the fun of it.
It's still really frustrating. Mike.
His age will drive you up the wall, but looking back at it, that memorial episode we did, a couple episodes ago here, you had a lot of examples of Todd, having tech glitches, and that was kind of cool thing about the show, and
Yeah.
shows I've done with him, same thing, not him. Sometimes it was me, and
Yeah, of course.
if
Right.
you're live, that's one thing, but if you're, not live, then you can, let the 4-letter
Yeah.
words fly and it's rather comical later on. But
Yeah. So really the takeaway, I mean, to some degree, and also thinking about the video side too. So if you're doing video like we are here too, keep it as simple as possible to some degree. Now, granted, a platform like a StreamYard can make things rather complex.
it
This
can, it can.
this platform that I'm using to do this show, the StreamYard platform, has a lot of bells and whistles. It's capable of having all sorts of overlays, having all sorts of I can pull up a screen share, like I can show Mike's website here on the screen, and it has, I can bring in like the website address for the new media show up on the screen, and it'll have a countdown clock that will, after 10 seconds, it'll take it down for me. I don't have to do that now. And then Mike's
When I worked in TV, we had that sort of thing where you could put the bug of the station or the network in the corner there, and it would time out. And I think we called it the name dropper.
Yeah, so it's great to have this kind of capabilities in a platform, but it can be a little distracting from doing good content, and that's what I remember about my nationally syndicated radio show that I did, was that I had my outline of my script of sorts right in front of me, and I didn't have to worry about the camera. I didn't have to be worried about that. I have to be looking up at the camera, or looking at the audience while I'm trying to do a show that's structured. My eyes were pretty much glued to the paper as that I was doing the show, and I was able to really follow it.
Right. That's the good thing about audio. You don't have to worry about a camera, but again, if you're going to do all the stuff, you got to do the video and the live and all that. And, there's nothing wrong with that. Again, some people bristle at the idea of doing video. Don't do video. I mean, it's I keep hearing, and I heard Tom Webster say this on his content briefing that he gave today about some research that came out, and it was like he has this thought that one of the reasons why women aren't doing a lot of video podcasts as far as hosts is because it's harder for them, right? That they have to put on makeup and they have to do all this kind of stuff, and that gets in the way of them getting involved in the video side. So I just thought it was interesting. I heard a lot of talk like that in the early years. And there's a little bit of a creep factor out there too for some women. That's I know somebody that does audio, and she will not even have her picture anywhere online if she can help it.
Well, that's fair to be concerned about that, I think. So, and I think that, it's ideal to have a less cluttered background. I know I'm probably not a great example of that either. If you look behind me, I've got a lot of stuff on my shelves. I should probably clean it off and just have like one thing there or something like that.
Sometimes it gives people, a reason to ask about it. I think I've told you about this show offline, but Leto's Law, it's a YouTube channel.
Yep.
And he has all kinds of crap behind him. And what he does is he hides $100 bill somewhere on the set, and he challenges his viewers to find that $100 bill. And, so people analyze his background all the time because they're looking, where did he hide the $100 bill this time?
Exactly. If you can find it, you get it, right? Is that
or something like that, but he goes months before somebody finds it.
Right. I have people comment, right up here on my shelf is a little stuffed plushie that says TiVo on it. It's something that I got back. I was a heavy TiVo user in the earlier years. So I don't think
I have a host
very often.
gator, stuffed gator on the shelf back here somewhere, but I got it at a show.
So another thing to use, and we're an example of it here, is using lower thirds, right? So we had, and that's basically like titles on on the video. So on the screen, if you're listening to this, it says Rob Greenlee, host of the newmediashow.com. So if you're watching this, you can see the domain name for the show. On Mike's, it's Mike Dell, Blubrry Podcasting. It's like a subtitle. So
when I accidentally put a comma in there or whatever.
That's okay. That's all right. And so there's all sorts of things that you can do too. You can also, so when you come into the Q&A segment, you can pull up on the screen. Now we're in the Q&A segment, right? So this is when we're going to cover your questions, or use it for a variety of different use cases. And it
makes the video more compelling rather than just two guys talking into a microphone with backgrounds.
And obviously you have to tell your audience, so the audio people hear that this is the Q&A segment now. So we're transitioning. That's what I had to do with my radio show for many years, is read a little thing. This is the mailbag section, and the first letter is or email.
That goes back to you're making 3 versions here. We're doing live, we're doing recorded video and audio, and I don't know how much you edit after the fact with the recorded side, but that's an option as well. You could record live and do a little bit of cleanup and post production for the audio and video that you put out as a podcast or on YouTube or whatever. Although this will live on YouTube as a live, correct?
Correct. And on LinkedIn and on X. So it's
multicasting. Wow.
Oh, definitely. I wouldn't do anything else, Mike. So I do. So after the show's episode, I do a deeper edit on the audio than I do on the video. Right. So just in a general sense, the audio gets a much deeper, and you'll typically see that in the minutes for the audio versus the video version. So this show is a real video podcast, right? It's available on Apple Podcasts on the video side, and you'll find that video is usually a little longer than the audio side, because I do a deeper edit on the audio.
Right. And, the audio, people that listen to audio are, got their earbuds in or they're driving. They pay more attention to the audio than, say, you're watching this on YouTube. You may not pay as much attention to it. So, it is better to clean up the audio a bit more than you would the video.
Though a lot of the industry has been pushing, and Spotify is an example of this, where if you upload a video to Spotify, they will basically overwrite your audio via RSS, and they will play the audio from your video as the audio for your show. And that's kind of missing the point, right?
I'm not a fan of that process, but again, audio should be good too on the video. So, it's not going to be as finessed.
It's not going to be as tightly edited, and more. There's also more and more post-production tools that will process just the audio versus processing a video. Right.
Some are better than others, but I heard a show. I don't even remember what show it was, but they obviously ran it through some sort of AI de-ummer or whatever, and
the script probably.
I don't remember. He didn't say, but I'm like, wow, that really sounds like they just cut the hell out of it. Humans say and humans breathe, and they snort sometimes. There's things that happen, and sometimes you don't have to get rid of that. Don't over edit.
Well, and AI is not going to edit or do a version of you that has you hiccuping, probably, right? Or coughing or clearing your throat.
I have a cough. I hit the cough button and cough.
Right, exactly. I have those little mute button here on my my mixer, but also, as far as moving forward with this, packaging of your podcast is also important. So, your episode needs a strong outcome driven title, right? Not just clickbait, but
not clickbait,
right?
Especially,
even though some little element of clickbait might work.
Well, I use an example. I watch a car YouTuber, very popular guy probably has 5 million subscribers. And every other video is, "Oh my God, you're not going to believe this," or "Oh, we're heartbroken," blah, blah, blah. And, he doesn't talk anything about whatever the title said. So whatever the title says, talk about that.
Yeah.
Point.
I mean, if you want to disappoint your audience, you put something in your thumbnail or in your image that has nothing to do with the show, and when they click on it because they want to learn about that, they're going to get disappointed and exit stage left, So they're not going to stick around. So, and then thumbnails is another one, right? And your cover art and your episode art. Those are ones that are being increasingly featured and important to get people to listen. So you have to, right?
Sure.
So you have to put in some effort in there, and especially if you're doing YouTube, the thumbnail is very important, and think about that hook, right? That hook needs to be in that thumbnail somehow and tell a story. So the thumbnail, this is a rectangular image, will start the story, and then your description will finish it.
And on YouTube, I don't know as titles of the episode are as important as that.
I think that they are important because they show right there with the thumbnail. Right.
But like I said, if it's in the image, that's generally where people look for information about what that video is about.
That's the first place they look. I agree. Yeah.
And then, the title might also convey some stuff, and it's good for the search engine. YouTube's the second largest search engine out there. So play to it.
Yeah. And there's another aspect of this too that's interesting too, is that, a live show can come across as kind of like very interactive and spontaneous and all this kind of stuff like that. But yet, if you want to have strong replays, you kind of have that's another reason why creating a kind of a deliberate episode, or one that has a focus and has an intention behind it, can help you grow audience.
And I think, can't you go back? I don't know this because I'm not a YouTuber so much, but can you go back and change the thumbnail after a live?
Yes, of course.
So that you set up the game on the thumbnail and the title of the episode, because you record these things, and even if you have a good plan, it might not go to plan. So you might have to revise a little bit of what you're doing.
Right, and you can go in and change the description. You can change the title. You can actually even edit the video. So, I mean, if you want to cut out, let's say you put out an episode that has a segment at the very beginning of the show where you and your co-host kind of meander on topics and don't get to the focus, right?
That never
you
happens.
Can go in and cut that out if you want.
That never happens.
That never happens, right? And then the next thing is, think about what you're doing with your show is building a community. Now, granted, this is kind of like a hot topic to some degree that is a little difficult to translate into reality. Thinking about your show from a community standpoint is really kind of like a next level thing, right? And how do you know if you have even the potential to create a deep community relationship with your show? Because it may not be in context for what you're doing. So if you want to do a show that wants to have community, I think you really have to think about, well, what's the value equation for your audience? And are they wanting or willing? Is it the type of community that would want to interface and interconnect with other people in the audience? Because a big part of community is not a community between you, the host, and the audience. It's oftentimes the most compelling part is the audience connection.
Interact with each other.
Right.
And what here, I got to say my pet peeve.
Okay, go for it.
Email lists. Email lists are awesome. Yeah. But if I come to your website the first time and immediately you pop up a thing that blocks what I wanted to come to your website for and say, sign up for our newsletter, I'm probably going to leave, unless it's really something compelling. But it's just, they don't know you yet. And, why would I give you my email address when I really don't know if I want to deal with this? So be careful with that kind of thing. Ask for it, do an ask. Don't do a force it in your face,
Though Though a lot of the tools are really, at least like WordPress and some of these platforms, basically enable that as their default function, right? Where it pops up on the screen every single time you go to a page, right? And it just like hammers you.
We deal with enough ads in this world everywhere. And, ads not necessarily bad, but sign up for my email list, give me your personal information without you knowing, like this show, newmediashow.com. If you go there, I'm guessing, I haven't been there in a couple of days. I'm guessing you don't have a pop-up before anybody gets anywhere.
No, I don't. No.
Right. And, like I said, it's good to ask, put it in the sidebar, put it on a page, hey, sign up for our email, go to New Media Show / whatever, and that's not bad.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I want to add to it is the ability to sign up like that. And then, but that puts a little bit of burden on me to come up with some sort of a email communication strategy as well. So is there value in that? And
sure. And doing a newsletter is no easier than doing a podcast,
Right. Exactly. And another thing with having that community connection that's really valuable, and I learned this firsthand for many years, is that those questions and those comments are great sources of ideas for episodes, for topics you might want to cover. If the audience is asking you about something, there's probably something in there that is of value to more people.
Yeah, I had that happen recently. One of my listeners on my main show said, "Hey, you never talk about this subject." And I said, "Oh, that's a good idea." So a couple episodes later, I talked about that subject, and that was good.
Yeah, and I think also the whole aspect of having a Q&A where you can acknowledge and identify your audience members in a way that creates a feeling of belonging, right? That they're connected to the show because we've acknowledged them, we've said their name on the show. That's why talk radio has worked so well over the years, is that people, those devout viewers or listeners, feel like they have a connection to the host, and the host knows who they are, and they're more likely to come back. I saw that a lot with my old radio show, that I get the same people every week coming back and commenting, and that's what you want, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And it's just, I don't know, like I call out members that people that email me. I'll call them out on the show, and there's nothing better than hearing your own name on a show that you listen to. That whole value for value boostergram thing, that was kind of the funny thing about it. You're more apt to do that because the host generally will acknowledge you, and that shows that there, to other audience members, that shows that you're communicative to your audience. And and I'm not saying that's the best way of doing that. We get comments on Facebook for these lives, and probably on X, and I don't know anything about LinkedIn, but I didn't even know you could go live on LinkedIn. So cool.
Yeah, I've been going live on LinkedIn for a few years now. So it's been, it gets a certain amount of, and then Facebook, all these platforms get a certain amount of views, right? Yeah. So they're worth it to do. It's really easy to send them there, X, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook. And then you go in and you share those episodes across, other tools, because the New Media Show has a Facebook group. And so I stream into my channel or my account, and then I share it over to that group.
Sure. That's another way of doing it, and if you're in a community on Facebook and it's okay with the owner or the admin of that community, say, do you mind if I share the show here, where it's appropriate?
Yep, exactly.
And another pro tip here.
Right.
Don't share your podcast episode in the podcasting groups on Facebook. Nobody cares.
Right. Right. Yeah, exactly. Podcasters listening to podcasters is a tough market.
Exactly. Hence this show.
It is.
There a lot of shows. This is super niche, and
super duper niche. Yeah, right.
And there's nothing wrong with that. And we've new media shows always had quite the following, so that's great. And other shows in the genre. But again, you're not going to set the world on fire. This is a niche. It's
right.
And there's nothing wrong with that. That's the thing. It's do you, and and this is the something that you and I are both very passionate about. You and Todd were very passionate about, and a lot of other people that you had on and will have on are very passionate about this whole community. And again, we don't have to agree on everything, So, and that's part of the charm of it. Is we can do this the way we want to do this, and and the audience will or will not come depending on what they're interested in.
Yeah, exactly. And increasingly, it's becoming an interest media. It's what I am interested in learning. Right, is what's driving a lot of audience these days.
Yeah. And that's the thing with podcasting as well. You don't even have to be the expert on the subject you're podcasting about, but by the time you've done 100 episodes and get an audience and some interaction, you're going to be the expert because your audience will teach you.
Right, that's true. So I think the big takeaway from this whole show, really, for me, to some degree, is you got to design a hook, you got to be consistent in your format, and that you're really creating a record once if you're doing live and you want to put it out as an on-demand show as well as an audio and video show. So you've got the option to have it out there in full replay mode on all the social platforms, and then if you want to put it out as a video show into a video podcast, you can do that on a platform like Blubrry. That's what this show is doing. So you go into Apple Podcasts, you can watch this episode
and a whole bunch of other apps. That
there are
actual video. It's not as popular as audio as far as in the apps, but
correct.
There's a growing number of new apps coming out that do feature video, and some of them have it in such a way that you can watch the video and then switch to audio and switch back, and they kind of stay in sync. So that's kind of cool. Spotify actually does that. That's one of the cool things they do. But
and then just this past week, Mike, I went in and reset the alternative enclosure tag for each of the RSS feeds that are in Apple. So the audio feed has also the video link in it too, in addition to the audio link, and the audio link has the video link in it too. So
and some apps surface that. Not everybody, but
all of the big platforms don't embrace it, but you have to start somewhere.
Yet.
Well, hopefully
Apple's been adding new things. They added chapters here recently, or they're adding it with the next version, and that's something that would have never happened prior to this, podcast 2.0 stuff. And it's really great to see them slowly implementing these things. Now they're implementing it their own way, which is cool. That's their prerogative, and other app developers do as well.
So Mike, let's try and wrap this up and go into our Q&A segment here.
Sounds good.
We can address a few questions that have come in. I mean, some of them were comments that were pretty early in the show, like I'm not sure what the name is on this one. It's a hi, hello. This person is a new person. If you could share your name in here, I'd be happy to share that. And then
some of those screen names are a little hard to pronounce.
Yeah. Well, I'm not quite sure what's right and what's wrong with it as far as saying it.
Right, exactly.
And then Dave Canyon wrote, I've known Dave for a long time. He he does a podcast for a long time, and he says, "Good evening, gentlemen. Hello from the road in New York.
Nice.
Listening in my truck driving home." So
Okay, so he's not a watcher, even though this is video.
yeah, well, unless
Let's
he's
hope not. You don't want to be
not
watching
watching the
video going
road.
down the road.
But yeah, Dave's a great guy. He's been doing a podcast from his truck for many years. It's like the
Nice.
old days with Trucker Tom. I don't know if you remember that, right?
Oh yeah, Trucker Tom, he's still doing it. He's on
Yep.
Blubrry as well. So
Yep, and so Dave has been doing a podcast for many years. He's an entertaining human. So I'll just put it to you that way. So he's a great guy.
check it out.
So Dave,
Oh,
thank you for the comment and drive safe.
yeah.
And then Paul Colligan, trying to watch a lot of buffering, some other place to go, or just catch the replay. So
Yeah.
not quite sure about the buffering thing, Paul. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Paul's getting inducted into the Podcast Hall of Fame. So
Nice. We'll see you
great.
down there, Paul.
Yeah. So Paul, thanks. I hope that the stream cleared up for you. And then, and he has a follow-up comment. He says, a couple of refreshes and it looks like it's working.
Yeah. Well, it could be his internet connection too.
Fair enough.
That goes sideways without us knowing why.
Yeah. And the last comment from him is, good to see you two. Well, it's great to hear from you, Paul, and we'll be seeing you very soon.
We'll be down there. I just booked my flights yesterday, so
oh yeah, I have to do that myself. So
we'll be there. Well, weather permitting up here.
Well, yeah, well that's the case for me too. And then Dave Canyon writes again. He says, I do my podcast and YouTube channel, and then I'm not at all concerned about the algorithms. I'd love engagement.
Algorithm. How did he pronounce that?
Algorithms.
Something like that.
I'd love the engagement, but I'm not about selling my soul or any portion of it for popularity or monetization. So, like I told you about Dave, he's a principled young man.
Yeah, very good, very good. Yeah, that's kind of how I am too. I'm very. I do what I do. You like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. That's
right.
Cool,
Exactly.
All good.
Dave has another follow-up comment. He says, you need to format your show for success. So you need to somewhat format your life as well. So, so I guess
I think maybe what he's getting at is, you got to make the time to do your show right. And that, can involve changing some life things, like I get up a half an hour earlier than I did before I started that daily morning show. Because I've got to do a little prep, and then I do the show before I start working, and so I've changed a little bit too.
Right. And then Paul Colligan posts another comment there. I think it was in the context of us talking about teasing what's coming up. I think that his comment here, it's what they do on Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
But what do they know?
Exactly. Yeah, I used to love their fake commercials that they would have at the beginning because I like that kind of humor.
Right. It's getting the audience hooked, right? And then Barbara Tomlin left a comment. Happy holidays, guys. Great to catch you live today. So, Barbara,
same to you, Barbara.
Thank you for tuning in. So, and then and the other post that we had in here is, how are you? Well, we're doing great. Thank you so much. So, well, Mike, thank you so much for joining me tonight. It was a great chat about podcasting.
I'll be happy to do it whenever. So just let me know.
Fair enough. Yeah. I'm going to be back every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Unless it's getting close to Christmas, then I may not. So we'll see.
No more 3 p.m. Huh?
No, I was thinking that was going to get in the way of too much other stuff that I'm doing. So
Who's she calling old?
That's what I was going to say. Barbara Tomlin, I still think old guys rule. So I appreciate that. I'm not that old though.
I'm going to turn 60 next month. So
that's right. I'm ahead of you.
I'm getting there.
You are
Hey, and by the way, I'm your first co-host in a long time with hair.
That's a good point.
Not much, but I got some.
I know I'm in the same boat with that. So we own it, Barbara, that we're older guys from the medium that are being slowly replaced by the younger generation.
I am super encouraged though. When I go to a conference now, I tell this story. I'm sorry, I'm taking again. I'm a ham radio operator. I'm also in aviation. I go into an aviation group, like the EAA group that I go to coffee with sometimes, whatever, go to a meeting. I'm close to the youngest guy in the room. Same thing with ham radio club meetings. I am by far the youngest person in the room most of the time.
Yeah.
With podcasting, I'm the oldest guy in the room. Close. So, that's very encouraging that the younger generations are picking this up and running with it.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. And if you want to follow me a little bit more off my own website, robgreenlee.com, I post articles in there, and then I have a bunch of links to a lot of the other shows that I do and my long bio. So you can check that out there. And I can also be reached via email too. So if you wanted to send a message to me, a question, a comment, whatever that you would like, I'm on X at Rob Greenlee, and then my email address is rob.greenlee@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. And I also have a YouTube channel too, which is where this show is being aired right now live. So it's a great place to go check it out. And hopefully tomorrow there's going to be an announcement about the 11 or 12 people that are going to be inducted into the Podcast Hall of Fame. So I'm going to make that announcement through Pod News. Hopefully if I can get that announcement out to James.
I already know 2 of them now. So, you're letting it leak out a little.
Well, yeah. And the Podfest folks have been pushing out leaks on it too. So yeah. I'm waiting for one guy to say yes or no. So hopefully that'll come through here soon. So anyway, so
of course you can find me at Blubrry or MikeDell.com.
Yeah, so
I'm on X, MG Dell, Facebook, whatever, all that good stuff.
So when is your Insider podcast? So are you doing that live too?
No, we're not doing them live anymore. We did for a while. We're just doing them recorded, and they come out every Monday. It's podcastinsider.com.
Got it.
Which actually redirects to a page on Blubrry, and there's a lot of other information in there, like we do blog posts and whatnot in there, mostly Blubrry related, but
awesome.
I want to make this a big pitch, but
right.
It is what it is.
Well, thank you for all the comments today. It looks like maybe we got a few more ones in here. It says here, Daphne wrote here. Let me see if I, let's see here. Barbara writes, this is Barbara Tomlin again. Mm-hmm. I need a defined time to put on my calendar. I'm older than both of you. So, and then Daphne looks like Shepherd, right? I want to host a podcast someday. Well, Daphne, jump in.
Yeah, talk to either one of us. We'll get you going.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and you also have another email address, rob@newmediashow.com. That's not working.
True. That's true.
I have one, Mike at newmediashow.com, which is forward.
Well, Daphne writes, thank you, gentlemen. And I appreciate you watching.
Yeah.
Daphne, thank you so much.
It's a pleasure. It's a little out of my comfort zone doing live, but hey, I'll get used to it.
Yeah. It just takes time to get used to it. And it looks like Dave Canyon writes here, great show, guys. Happy holidays and be safe and well. And Barbara Tomlin writes again here, Oh my, do you still log into X daily? I'm about to give up my premium account.
Yeah.
Notifications and visibility have been so disappointing. So
Yeah, there's
yeah,
not much interaction I've noticed too on X. There's, unless you say something political and then, oh boy, you get hammered. But,
yeah,
if you're just, you know, putting up cat pictures and links to your podcast,
right.
that's your mileage may vary. Just depends, where your audience is.
Yeah, I've been on Twitter, X since 2007, so it was
Me too.
I guess it's just a habit, right?
Yeah.
So to stay on there
I always
and
post stuff over there, and
right,
sometimes it's interesting to kind of doom scroll on it when you got other things
yeah,
going on.
and Barbara Tomlin writes, "I sure miss Todd."
Yeah,
Yeah,
so do
yeah, we
for
do too.
sure.
Yeah,
Especially at Blubrry, he had his hands in pretty much everything. So we're having to learn stuff we didn't have to do before, and that's not a bad thing, but it's
yeah, it's
terrible
too
that he's
bad.
not here. That's the problem. Would have been nicer
Yeah.
if he said he was going to retire and go sit on the beach in Hawaii, but didn't work out that way.
No, I didn't. Yeah. So so well, Mike, thank you for your time tonight, and thank you out there, for watching us or listening to us here in this episode. I'll be back, next Wednesday at, 6 PM Eastern, 3 PM Pacific, for another live episode of the New Media Show. I don't have my guests to announce quite yet, so,
I was going to ask.
it's gonna be it's gonna be hopefully, it'll be an interesting one.
Yeah.
So as though I hope every guest is.
Yeah, we try. We try.
Of course. Right. Exactly. All right. Well, thank everybody for being here tonight. I appreciate it. And have a great rest of your evening. Or if you see this tomorrow in the RSS feed, follow us there on whatever platform that you're watching us on.
Yeah.
You
Should
know,
be in all of them by now.
right.
Uh,
That's the idea.
and as a bonus, I think we're on Spotify now, which wasn't the case before.
I hope so. I should go check that out. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
all right.
I'll make it happen.
All right. Sounds great. All right. Good night.